Hi, this is Dr. Gail Eskis, and this is your online memory bootcamp. Today we're going to talk about what is memory. So for this topic, we'll be going over things like what is memory and how is it stored in the brain. We'll talk about the different types of memory, and then we'll talk about the 3 steps to a good memory, or the 3 R's. So let's get started. Okay, here's a thought experiment. I invite you to think about these questions. What was the last movie you watched? Think about that. Can you remember that? How does it feel? What was going on? Who was there? Where did you celebrate your 18th birthday? Think about that memory. Does it feel as strong? Are there as many details? What was the name of your English teacher in high school? Do you have any memories of your English teacher? Do you have any visions of her or him up on the front of the classroom? Do you recall the name? What is the capital of Manitoba? Where is the M on the computer keyboard? How do you ride a bicycle? If someone were to ask you, what would you tell them? Okay, well, these were all memories, and they are in your brain, and the brain has recorded these experiences as memories for your later use when you need to think about them. But memory is not like a filing cabinet. It's not like this information exists in a file cabinet, in a drawer, in a folder. Memories are actually stored in networks of cells throughout the brain, more like a 3D fishing net. So at the time you were experiencing those events or learning that material or playing the piano, those events are being recorded in your brain. And the brain is then making a network. All those areas of the brain that are involved in those events are working together and they make a network. So the memory that you're recalling, or the trace, is actually a network of connections that are recreated, created and recreated, connecting cells that are working together. And this type of hypothesis about how memory is stored was started with D.O. Hebb, Donald O. Hebb, who's actually a native Nova Scotian. And he hypothesized, and now later neuroscientists have agreed, that cells that fire together, that is, cells that are active when something is going on at the same time, they wire together, and that's what creates your memory network. Now, we have memory types, many types of memories, as you experienced from all those questions. We have episodes in our life, the mental diary. We have facts and words. That's your mental encyclopedia. And we have procedures and skills. That's your doing memory. And I'm going to talk about each of these now. So different types of memories are actually in different systems of your brain, and they work in slightly different ways. The episodic memory, that autobiographical memory or your mental diary, basically is about recent and remote events from your daily life. So recent events like the last movie you watched or the dinner you had yesterday. Remote events like your 18th birthday, the birth of your first child, your wedding day, and even future events like your plans for action, i.e., make a doctor's appointment or call a friend, stop at the store on the way home. All of these events or plans are stored in a way that are connected through many different sensory systems and many different contexts. So for instance, when you recall the last movie you watched, You might know when you did it. You might know who you were with. You might know what you were doing at the time. Were you eating? Were you feeling an emotion while you're watching the movie? All of these things get connected together into that memory network. The same with your 18th birthday. You might feel that feels a little vaguer, but there might be an emotion attached to it, or there might be other things that you remember particularly about that day. That's a little different from the semantic memory or your knowledge memory or your encyclopedia that stores facts and words. So these types of memories are like the capital of Manitoba. What is 2 times 3? The first Prime Minister of Canada, or the meanings of words. These are stored in a different area, and they actually don't have as much context or, or details as this episodic memory. So you don't really have potentially an emotion about the capital of Manitoba unless you visited and you have a autobiographical memory. But the actual fact itself is just sort of there. 2 times 3 equals 6. That's just a fact. There's no context. The third type of memory, the procedural memory, is your motor memory for skills, your motor skills and your cognitive skills. So things like riding a bicycle, typing, playing the piano. These are memories that are hard to express by words. They're easier to recall by the doing. So when I asked you, where's the K on the keyboard, what was your first response? You moved your finger to where that position was. And that's the type of memory then that's recalled by the doing rather than the saying. So these are all different types of memories, and they all operate in different ways. And this course is really about episodic memory. So we're going to be talking mostly about making memories of your daily life and recalling memories of your daily life. But you'll hear a little more about the differences between these systems in the next topic up, memory and aging. Now, in terms of a good episodic memory, there are actually 3 stages to making a memory. The first stage is paying attention and receiving the memory. The second stage is the recording or laying down the network. And the third stage is retrieving the memory when you need it. So we'll talk about each of these stages. So in terms of receiving, the critical thing is paying attention. You know, our brain receives way too much information, and we're often filtering most of it out. So if you want to make a memory, then you have to pay attention first so that you can start the processing of that information. And that is the critical part, the critical step to making a strong and good memory is paying attention and then thinking about or processing that information. Processing it to connect with what you know, processing it that makes it personally relevant. The more you think about it, the more you're making a strong memory. And we call this deep linking. So you're making a network here. And as I said before, the events that are going on are activating the brain, and the areas of the brain that are activated are creating connections that make this network. And the network is your memory. So the deeper you think about the information, the more important it is, the more relevant it is, the stronger the network that you create. And we'll be talking about deep linking in a further module in terms of ways to increase your processing to make the memory stronger. And I also invite you to do the 2 demonstration videos that we have for this module to show you the power of attention and to show you different ways of processing, making memories. Now, the recording step is after you've had that event, that experience, the brain's been activated, it's in a network, then memories are stored by structural changes that connect those cells that were activated into the network. So this takes time. It could take months to years. But in the beginning, this network is very vulnerable and easily interrupted. It can be interrupted by brain injury. It can be interrupted by an acute illness like a heart attack. It can be interrupted by some medications. So brain health is very important for this stage so that your cells and brain are functioning in as good a way as possible so they can make those connections. So sleep, stress, food you eat, all of those things in terms of brain health are important for recording. The third step is retrieving. That is getting the memory out again. And we're starting to learn now over the last decade or so that retrieval isn't a passive, oh, it just pops into your head. Retrieval is really an active process that has to actually recreate that network at the time you retrieve it. So, how do you recreate the network? Well, you recreate it by cues. And by cues, I mean you think about what is it that I need to remember about my 18th birthday. So you might think, oh, who was there? Where was I? And that type of information can all add up to recreating the birthday party, for instance. Now, recreation of a network isn't always completely accurate. And sometimes when you recreate the network, you might make a mistake in a little bit of information, and then that gets stored to that network again, and thus your memories are slightly altered over time. This type of process, in which when you think about a memory, it becomes a little more vulnerable, is demonstrated in one of the videos that we have in the extra resources in a Nature of Things episode called The Mirage of Memory, if you're interested in this. So your memories aren't always completely accurate, but the more processing at the receiving end when you're thinking about the memory to begin with can boost the process for retrieval. So it creates better links of items into a network that makes it easier to recall later. And interestingly, each time you retrieve that memory, you record it again. And that's a good thing too, because that creates a stronger network. And we'll be talking about that at length in the third module that we call Say It Again, Sam, in which we can use that idea that retrieving information makes it stronger to help you make better memories. So, wrapping it up, the first thing we talked about are the different types of memories. So think to yourself, can you think of those three memories, different types? Okay. The first one was episodic memory, or memory for your daily events, your mental diary. The second one was semantic memory, or memory for information and facts, things that we learn at school. The third one was procedural memory, memories that we get by doing, things that we learn from practicing. So now, what are the 3 R's to a good episodic memory? Think about that for a minute. Can you think of those 3 R's? The first one is receiving. That is paying attention and processing and thinking about the information to make a good, strong network. Then it gets recorded and stored in the brain. And the third one is retrieving or recreating the network. And the better receiving is better retrieving. And retrieving also helps recreate the network again and again and make it stronger. So I hope you found this interesting and informative. Up next, for topic 2, we're going to be talking about memory and aging. And we've got some good news and maybe not so good news. So, hope you can join us for that. Bye for now.